I'm saying? So it definitely feel good, come from that to this. I was gaining knowledge every time I was out of town because it was like, when I just stay in Chicago, I'm thinking that.
Lil Durk has done the unthinkable. He's found a way to make his voice heard from behind bars. Even with walls closing in and legal fire raining down, he's using his music as a weapon, a shield, and a mystery all at once. With federal charges looming and his fate hanging by a thread, Durk's newest move has the internet buzzing. But what's the real message here? Is this just another album drop? Or a calculated power play? Could this be a warning shot aimed at his enemies? A sly attempt to take control of the narrative before the courtroom chaos begins? Whatever it is, people are listening, and they can't stop talking. Lil Durk's newest album, Deep Thoughts, landed on March 28, 2025, and not under normal circumstances. This isn't just another project. This is a statement released while the Chicago rap star sits in a Los Angeles jail cell, facing one of the most serious legal battles of his life. He's awaiting trial for federal murder-for-hire charges tied to the 2022 killing of rival rapper Kondo Rondo, plus another alleged gang-related hit in Chicago. The stakes, life behind bars. But Durk isn't staying silent. Not even close. He and his team pieced together a jaw-dropping 17-track album using nothing but monitored prison phone calls. The entire project was recorded through gritty, old-school methods. In a raw, behind-the-scenes mini-film, we see producers holding prison phones up to studio monitors while Durk spits verses straight from jail. No fancy mics, no plush studios, just pure survival mode artistry. Because of the limitations, this album takes a stripped-back approach. There are no stacked vocals or crazy sound effects, just raw, bare emotion layered over beats that had to be cleared remotely. Every second was monitored, every word risky. But what really sets Deep Thoughts apart is what lies beneath the sound. Sure, the album's full of melodic trap bangers and big-name collabs with artists like Future and Jhené Aiko, but there's more happening here. Much more. This is a chess move, a carefully designed message built to keep his name alive, to feed the streets with just enough energy, and maybe, just maybe, to nudge public opinion before his October 2024 trial begins. The threat of life in prison is all over this album. You can feel it in every line. But listen closely. The lyrics are cleaned up, scrubbed, edited with surgical precision. Gone are the heavy threats or violent declarations. In the leaked version of the track, 1,000 times, a chilling line, "I'm gonna kill him and I shoot him dead for any child of mine," is nowhere to be found in the final cut. On vanish mode, even the word gun is bleeped out, along with the number 3 for reasons no one can quite explain. Fans are puzzled, with many guessing it's more about legal strategy than morality. Josh say he is in trouble, and listeners know something's up. While some applaud the creative evolution, others call it watered down compared to past tracks like 720020's, Paco, or Voice's Head Taps. But no matter what side they're on, one thing's certain. This album isn't just music, it's a message, and everyone's trying to decode it. Yet others argue this restraint is a calculated necessity. When federal agents have you under the microscope, rapping openly about bodies isn't just risky, it's reckless. This balancing act between staying authentic and staying out of further trouble is what gives Deep Thoughts its unusual tension. Tracks like Monitoring Me make no secret of this atmosphere, with lyrics that openly acknowledge tapped phones, hidden microphones, and creeping paranoia. Durk's voice carries the weight of someone who knows every word he utters could become courtroom evidence. Even so, the album doesn't feel stripped of its grit. It feels controlled. On tracks like Opportunist, Durk paints himself as a hardened survivor, someone who's been betrayed, outmaneuvered, and left to navigate the fallout. These reflections don't come across as raw confessions, though. They feel carefully measured, sidestepping details that could further implicate him. It's a performance of strength, but also of caution. The album's features only underscore this careful strategy. Future's guest verse on They Want to Be You infuses the project with a burst of street credibility, offering a hard edge without crossing any legal lines. Meanwhile, Jhené Aiko's soulful vocals on Can't Hide It inject a touch of vulnerability, presenting Durk as a more multifaceted artist, not just a street kingpin, but someone who feels, who reflects, and who struggles. The juxtaposition is striking. This is not the same Durk prosecutors have painted as a ruthless puppet master. This is an artist with nuance, a man trying to tell his side of the story, without saying too much. Even the album's visual identity reflects this balancing act. The AI-generated cover art, which depicts a shadowy, abstract figure confined in a surreal cell, is deliberately removed from any actual prison imagery. It's symbolic, a statement that Durk is controlling his own narrative, even as he remains physically behind bars. The message is subtle, but clear. This isn't about laying bare every detail of his reality. It's about shaping perception, staying present, and giving his audience something to hold on to while he fights his legal battles. The response from fans has been divided. On one hand, some longtime supporters lament the absence of the unfiltered street storytelling that once defined Durk's music. They miss the raw pain of tracks like When We Shoot or Street Prayer, songs that help cement him as one of drill music's most authentic voices. On the other hand, others see Deep Thoughts as a sign of growth, a more mature, introspective evolution that reflects where Durk is today. Tracks like Notebook, No Hook stand out for their quiet intensity. With minimalist piano loops as the backdrop, Durk turns inward, reflecting on fatherhood, loss, and the immense pressure of his circumstances. It's not what some fans expected, but it's undeniably powerful. The album's release wasn't without controversy, though. Rumors swirled about its rushed production, and the final product shows signs of last-minute legal tinkering. Tracks like Discontinuing and Walk Hard sound abruptly edited, with noticeable bleeps and reworked verses. The rollout, too, felt uneven. Some fans speculated about scrapped features, or even more provocative original versions that never saw the light of day. It's clear that lawyers had a hand in shaping this album, combing through it line by line. This level of censorship has left some listeners frustrated, feeling as though the project doesn't fully deliver on its initial promise. Others, however, see these adjustments as part of the larger story, a testament to just how high the stakes are for Durk at this moment. Ultimately, Deep Thoughts lands somewhere between a bold artistic statement and a careful legal chess move. It's an album that reflects its creator's precarious reality, forcing fans to grapple with what happens when authenticity and survival collide. For die-hard fans, the mere existence of Deep Thoughts is nothing short of remarkable. They argue that the album itself is a testament to Lil Durk's relentless drive, a statement that, even as he fights for his life in court, he refuses to let his voice be silenced. Every beat, every bar is hard-won, they say, and that grind deserves respect. When you peel back the layers, it's clear that every track on Deep Thoughts carries dual meaning. On one level, songs like Thinky Load explore themes of loyalty and betrayal. For the streets, they're rallying cries, reflections of trust broken and alliances tested. But to a courtroom audience, these same tracks position Durk as a careful, calculated leader navigating a world full of deception. They serve to humanize him, even as prosecutors try to do the opposite. Other tracks, like Alam Dalala and Deep Depression, dive into redemption and mental health struggles. They paint a picture of a man grappling with inner demons, trying to find balance under crushing pressure. This makes Durk relatable to fans, but it also subtly shifts public perception ahead of his trial. Even the mini-documentary footage of him interacting with his children works double duty. It shows the world a devoted father, not the ruthless kingpin the prosecution wants to portray. It's a delicate, high-stakes strategy where every move counts. This approach mirrors what we've seen from fellow rapper Young Thug during his RICO case. Releasing music while in the legal spotlight helps keep an artist culturally relevant, maintaining their fan base's loyalty and reminding the public of their talent. Lil Durk's team seems to be drawing from the same playbook, using Deep Thoughts as both a creative lifeline and a bid for sympathy. The difference? The stakes are far higher. Federal charges, unlike state charges, carry life sentences. The pressure is immense. For Durk, Deep Thoughts could be his final musical statement, a last testament before what some fear might be a life sentence. On the other hand, it might also be the foundation of a monumental comeback if he's acquitted. The album's ultimate place in history hinges on the outcome of his October trial. A conviction could transform Deep Thoughts into a tragic swan song, with its warnings and confessions cast as hauntingly prophetic. An acquittal, however, might elevate it to the level of a redemption story, where Durk turns his struggles into legend. For now, Durk finds himself trapped between two worlds, the streets that made him and the courtroom that could break him. And while Deep Thoughts has captured the attention of fans and critics alike, a larger, more pressing question looms in the background. How did Lil Durk end up behind bars on such grave charges in the first place? It all began with a federal indictment alleging a murder-for-hire scheme. In October 2024, Grammy-winning Chicago rapper Lil Durk was arrested in Broward County, Florida, on charges of conspiracy to commit murder for hire. Prosecutors claim Durk orchestrated a deadly 2022 shooting in Los Angeles, targeting his rival, rapper Quando Rondo. This feud dates back to the tragic death of Durk's close friend and protege, King Von, in 2020. According to the indictment, the attack on Quando Rondo's vehicle was intended to take his life. Instead, it resulted in the death of his cousin, Savia Lil Pooh Robinson, who was in the car with him. Prosecutors allege that Durk funded the operation through his OTF rap collective, offering money and lucrative opportunities to those willing to carry out the hit. These allegations underscore a long-standing and bitter conflict between Durk's camp and Rondo's associates, one that prosecutors argue spilled into deadly violence. Now, as Durk faces the full weight of the federal justice system, Deep Thoughts becomes more than just an album. It's a piece of a much larger, more complex puzzle, one that could define his legacy for years to come. The chain of events leading to this moment is as tangled as it is tragic. Back in 2020, King Von, Lil Durk's close friend and protege, was killed in a shootout involving Quando Rondo's crew in Atlanta. Although charges against one of Rondo's affiliates were later dropped, the scars left by that night never healed. According to federal agents, this loss set the stage for Durk's alleged retaliation, the 2022 murder-for-hire plot. The prosecution's case against Durk now rests on three core pillars of evidence, each carefully constructed to paint him as the mastermind behind the scheme. The first pillar is financial records. Prosecutors have traced OTF-connected credit cards to a trail of travel expenses. Flight bookings, hotel stays, and rental cars linked to the alleged hitmen all point back to these accounts. The paper trail tells a damning story, with federal investigators presenting a clear narrative. The shooters traveled from Chicago to Los Angeles just days before the attack, and every step of the journey was financed through OTF funds. Next comes digital evidence. This is the second pillar, and perhaps the most sprawling. Federal prosecutors claim to have amassed over 230 gigabytes of wiretapped calls, intercepted text messages, and combed through social media posts. Within this mountain of data, they say, lie coded references to the plot. Phrases like "smoke that boy" and "handle business" are alleged to be thinly veiled instructions to carry out the hit. Prosecutors have also pulled from a separate 2023 FBI affidavit tied to an unrelated Chicago investigation. This affidavit claims that Durk offered payments to retaliate for his brother Dante Banks' 2021 murder. These allegations were enough to convince a judge that Durk posed a serious threat, leading to his bail being denied. The third pillar is witness testimony, and it's perhaps the most unpredictable. Federal documents mention unnamed cooperators who have come forward in exchange for leniency. One alleged shooter, facing a life sentence, is now working with prosecutors. These witnesses reportedly provide details linking Durk to the planning stages of the attack. However, their credibility is not yet proven. Cross-examinations and the defense's counter-arguments could shake their reliability in court. Still, their statements add weight to the prosecution's case, placing Durk in a precarious position. The odds are steep. In the federal system, over 99% of cases end in either guilty pleas or convictions. Conspiracy charges alone could be enough to seal Durk's fate, as the law treats conspirators with the same severity as the individuals who physically commit the crimes. On top of that, firearm enhancements carry mandatory minimum sentences. One charge against Durk even involves possession of a machine gun during a violent crime, a detail that raises the stakes considerably. Adding to these challenges is the argument that Durk might flee if released. Prosecutors have pointed to 3 unused flight reservations made after his associates were arrested: tickets to Dubai, Italy, and Switzerland. These bookings, they argue, suggest Durk was considering an escape plan. The initial trial date of January 2025 was pushed back to October, with both sides agreeing that the case's complexity warranted the delay. The defense is expected to counter the prosecution's narrative with several arguments. They'll likely claim that Durk's name was used on financial accounts without his direct knowledge or consent. The supposed coded language in his messages? They'll argue it's nothing more than creative expression, typical rapper talk, not actual orders for violence. But complicating matters further are unsealed court documents pointing to a second alleged murder-for-hire plot. While Durk has not been charged in this Chicago case, prosecutors argue it's part of a broader pattern. They cite text messages discussing payments for the killing of Stefan Mack, a suspected gangster disciples leader. Although technically unrelated to the current charges, this parallel case casts a shadow over Durk's defense. Jurors might interpret it as evidence of a consistent, dangerous mindset. Meanwhile, the trial reignites the ever-controversial debate over using rap lyrics in court. The prosecution has made it clear they plan to introduce Durk's lyrics as evidence, arguing that lines like, "I'll pay $1 million just to see him dead," amount to more than just creative storytelling. They're confessions. Critics, including experts like Eric Nielsen, have pushed back, calling this tactic a dangerous weaponization of artistic expression. They argue that rap should be treated as any other genre of art, a space for fiction, hyperbole, and venting, not a courtroom admission of guilt. As the October trial looms, these arguments, along with the evidence presented by both sides, will shape Durk's fate. For now, he remains at the center of one of the most high-stakes legal battles in the music industry, with everything to lose and, perhaps, everything to prove. The fallout from Lil Durk's legal troubles has been swift and severe. His once strong public image is now unraveling at an astonishing pace. Not long ago, Durk made headlines for a $150,000 donation to Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson's campaign, a gesture meant to signal a positive influence on the community. But that goodwill quickly turned sour. After Durk's arrest, critics demanded the donation be returned, casting doubt on his intentions. In a matter of weeks, suburban towns like Broadview, Illinois, rescinded honorary keys to the city that had been awarded to Durk. It was a rapid and public decline from celebrated hometown hero to controversial figure. Within the hip-hop world, reactions have been just as divided. Supporters insist that the case against Durk is circumstantial at best. They argue that he doesn't have a history of violent convictions and that there's no definitive smoking gun tying him directly to the alleged shooting. These fans maintain that the evidence is thin and that Durk is being unfairly targeted due to his fame and his association with Chicago's drill scene. On the other hand, skeptics contend that Durk's indictment was almost inevitable. They point to his lyrics, which often revolve around street life, and to the long-standing reputation of his collective OTF, as reasons why the feds had their sights set on him for years. Deep Thoughts, Durk's most recent album, hasn't escaped this controversy. Songs like Prayers Up and Untouchable feel to many listeners like veiled references to his legal battle. Fans have combed through the lyrics for hints about his mindset, his fears, and his plans. Yet while some in the hip-hop community rally behind Durk, many of his high-profile peers have remained noticeably silent. Major stars like Drake and J. Cole, who have collaborated with Durk in the past, have distanced themselves from the storm, refusing to comment publicly on the situation. This silence has only fueled the narrative that Durk is increasingly isolated as his legal woes deepen. As Durk's trial approaches, three potential outcomes loom large. The most common path in federal cases is a plea deal, one that might reduce his sentence to something like 20 or 30 years if he admits guilt. A trial conviction, by contrast, could mean life in prison, given the severity of the charges and the unforgiving nature of federal sentencing guidelines. The third, least likely scenario is an acquittal. For that to happen, Durk's legal team would need to dismantle the prosecution's case, attacking the credibility of witnesses and exposing weaknesses in the digital evidence. An acquittal would not only set Durk free, but also strike a blow against the practice of using rap lyrics as courtroom evidence. However, few believe this outcome is probable. The stakes are immense, not just for Durk's freedom, but for what his case represents. A conviction would mark him as yet another artist whose creative output is wielded against them, reinforcing a precedent that many argue unfairly targets hip-hop. But if he's acquitted, it would lend weight to claims that the justice system unfairly singles out rappers. Either way, his trial, set for October 2025, is certain to send shockwaves through both the legal and music worlds. Of course, this isn't the first time Durk's name has been connected to controversy. His career has long been a balancing act between the street life he raps about and the fame that puts a spotlight on every move he makes. Over the years, he's faced a series of personal and professional challenges. His lyrics often explore themes of loyalty and revenge, but these aren't just words on a track. They mirror struggles from his own life. Family troubles, old feuds, and street conflicts have repeatedly surfaced, each incident blurring the line between art and reality. One particularly shocking event came in 2023, when allegations emerged that Durk's 10-year-old son and the child's mother were involved in a violent altercation. They were accused of shooting the mother's boyfriend 6 times. While no charges were filed, the incident quickly went viral. Fans and critics alike dissected it, questioning its connection to Durk's music. Social media lit up with dark humor, with users imagining lyrics Durk might write about the situation. "Growing up in the trenches was tough, but it wasn't that bad," joked one. Another quipped, "Had a sit down with my son. He shot his stepdad." Some even gave the boy a nickname, Baby Threat, a nod to Chicago's ongoing issues with youth violence. The event became a flashpoint. Critics held it up as a grim example of how the drill music culture can normalize conflict, even for children. Supporters, however, dismissed it as a private family matter, urging people not to overanalyze or draw sweeping conclusions. Regardless, the incident served as a potent reminder of the thin boundary between the themes in Durk's songs and the reality he and his loved ones face. It's a story of art imitating life, and life, in turn, shaping the art that has defined Durk's career. With so much at stake, his upcoming trial could be a turning point that either cements his legacy or brings his meteoric rise to a screeching halt. The tension between Lil Durk and Chief Keef, two of Chicago's most influential drill figures, can be traced back to 2013, when their once shared affiliations began to splinter. The spark came when Durk found himself behind bars on gun charges. According to Durk, Chief Keef refused to step up and cover the $10,000 bail. This perceived snub didn't sit well. Durk took to Twitter, calling out GBE, Keef's crew, and making it clear he felt betrayed. "You'd be dead if it wasn't for 300, he tweeted, referencing their former shared ties to OTF 300. The message was unmistakable. Keef had abandoned him. For a moment, it seemed the rift might heal. But by 2015, tensions erupted again. On the remix of Shaq, Durk delivered a sly jab. "Just say me and Sosa beefing, but we both eating. Only one king." Fans interpreted the line as a dig at Keef's declining influence, hinting that while both had found success, Durk's star was on the rise while Keef's was dimming. Keef, not one to back down, responded by throwing his weight behind Tyga and Game's diss track aimed at Durk. This public display of support for Durk's rivals only deepened the divide. Behind the scenes, their feud exposed a broader clash of values. Durk was striving for mainstream acceptance, pursuing collaborations with major artists, and shifting toward a more polished sound. Meanwhile, Keef remained staunchly loyal to Chicago's raw, unfiltered drill roots. To fans, this difference became symbolic. Durk represented a path to commercial success, while Keef stood for the gritty authenticity that had defined the genre's early days. Observers noted that while Lil Reese, another prominent figure in their circle, seemed willing to collaborate with both sides, Durk and Keef steadfastly avoided working together. Speculation swirled. Had industry ambition driven them apart, or were there deeper personal betrayals at play? Durk's loyalties to his original block, Lamron 300, added another layer of complexity. Despite sending money, cars, and guns back to the neighborhood, some Lamron members felt abandoned. They accused Durk of turning his back on the block that had supported him from the start. This tension reached a boiling point after the 2014 killing of Durk's cousin, D-Thang. While many in the neighborhood expected Durk to retaliate, he chose to focus on his burgeoning career instead. Lamron members labeled him a clout chaser, accusing him of exploiting their support to further his fame. The feud went public when Lamron affiliates released a diss track targeting Durk. In response, Durk fired back in songs like Jesse and OJ Rats, accusing former allies of being snitches and sellouts. The fallout left fans and critics divided. Some praised Durk for leaving street politics behind, arguing that he had outgrown the environment that initially shaped him. Others, however, branded him a studio gangster who had profited off a lifestyle he no longer truly lived. The situation revealed an uncomfortable truth about drill culture. Loyalty is a fragile thing. In a world where alliances can make or break reputations, the perception of disloyalty can erase years of respect and support almost overnight. As if the feud with Keef wasn't enough, Durk found himself entangled in an even more heated rivalry following the death of his close friend and fellow Chicago rapper, King Von. Von's killing in 2020, during a shootout allegedly involving members of NBA YoungBoy's crew, set off a chain reaction of bad blood. What started as an indirect conflict quickly escalated into one of hip-hop's most toxic and public feuds. Initially, Durk and Youngboy had been collaborators, creating music together and appearing to be on friendly terms. But Von's death changed everything. Youngboy released I Hate Youngboy, a scathing track that mocked Durk's grief, taking personal shots and fanning the flames. Durk, for his part, responded with veiled threats on tracks like Back in Blood, leading fans to speculate that revenge was on the horizon. The tension spilled over onto social media, where both rappers and their entourages traded jabs. Youngboy took aim at Durk's legal troubles, his parenting, and his reputation, escalating what had started as a music-related beef into an all-out personal war. Today, the feuds that surround Lil Durk, both past and present, continue to shape the narrative around his career. They serve as a reminder of the fragile alliances in drill culture and the way personal conflicts can bleed into music, altering the course of an artist's trajectory. Whether these rivalries ultimately help or hinder Durk's legacy remains to be seen. But one thing is certain, they have left a lasting mark on the drill scene and the broader world of hip-hop. Fans remain deeply divided over the ongoing drama surrounding Lil Durk. Some insist that his silence about retaliation stems from genuine hatred for NBA Youngboy and his crew, seeing it as a calculated refusal to play into his rivals' games. Others, however, believe the entire feud is little more than a publicity stunt designed to stir up attention and keep both artists in the public eye. Reddit threads buzz with debate, questioning Durk's authenticity. Critics ask bluntly, if he's really about that life, why hasn't he taken action? Why hasn't he slid for King Von? Durk's supporters pushed back. They argued that he's made a conscious decision to prioritize his career, his family, and his long-term goals. To them, revenge wasn't the answer. It would only derail everything Von wanted for their collective success. This debate highlighted a core tension in hip-hop, how personal loss, public perception, and industry competition often collide. In a genre where pain can be both a creative wellspring and a financial boon, tragedy becomes part of the narrative, fueling streams and record sales alike. Amid this, Chicago rapper 600 Breezy emerged as a vocal critic, adding fuel to the fire. Breezy openly questioned Durk's loyalty to Von's memory and accused him of profiting off Von's death. He went so far as to suggest that if Von were still alive, he would have eclipsed Durk in fame. While Durk himself never directly addressed Breezy's remarks, the repeated attacks painted Breezy as someone chasing clout by stirring up controversy. Social media users were quick to draw parallels between this feud and a broader issue within drill culture, the tendency for artists to exploit real-life trauma as a way to stay relevant. For some fans, the drama was entertaining, just another layer to the complex world of drill music. For others, it was a troubling sign of how deeply entrenched violence and exploitation are in the culture. Critics argued that these public feuds only perpetuate cycles of conflict in communities already struggling with systemic challenges. Meanwhile, supporters defended Durk, pointing to his rise from hardship and his ability to channel that pain into music that resonates with millions. Yet Durk's lyrics have often brought him more than just fame. They've landed him in hot water too. Court cases have cited his songs as evidence, claiming that his verses blur the line between storytelling and confession. His detractors have seized on this, insisting that it validates concerns about drill music's influence and its supposed glorification of violence. But Durk's advocates counter that it's a double standard rooted in racial bias. After all, they argue, rock artists have long penned fictional, violent lyrics without facing legal consequences. Why then should hip-hop be held to a different standard? The debates over Durk's authenticity are constant and intense. Supporters point to his early mixtapes like Signed to the Streets and the personal tragedies he's endured, especially the loss of his brother D-Thang, as proof of his credibility and connection to the struggles he raps about. Detractors, on the other hand, highlight his growing industry ties, his increasingly luxurious lifestyle, and his lack of visible retaliation for Von's death as evidence that he's no longer as street as he claims. Even Durk's philanthropic efforts come under scrutiny. Some see his scholarships for Chicago youth as genuine attempts to give back. Others view them cynically, framing these gestures as a calculated effort to polish his image and solidify his career. This duality of a rapper who is both a father and a figure entwined in violent narratives, of an artist accused of turning his back on his roots, and of a musician whose lyrics now haunt him in court, is what keeps Durk at the center of hip-hop's most pressing debates. His feuds and controversies underscore the razor-thin line between authenticity and performance, a tension that defines much of modern rap. At the same time, the legal challenges he faces raise larger questions about whether artists can ever fully separate their art from the realities that inspire it. As Durk continues to navigate these challenges, his past controversies and current entanglements ensure that his story and the conversation surrounding it remain far from over. The pressing question now is, what's next for Lil Durk? As the legal walls close in and industry pressures mount, he faces a chapter in his life that could redefine not only his career, but his freedom and his entire legacy. Once a towering figure in Chicago's drill scene and a dominant force on the charts, Durk now finds himself at a crossroads, navigating a labyrinth of federal charges that threaten to dismantle everything he's built. The charges stem from a federal indictment for murder for hire tied to the 2022 killing of Savaya Lil Pooh Robinson, a botched retaliation attempt that allegedly targeted rapper Quando Rondo. With an October 2024 trial date fast approaching, Durk's future remains shrouded in uncertainty. His legal team is fighting an uphill battle, and his once stable career trajectory now hangs by a thread. Central to the case is the murder for hire charge, a severe allegation that carries a maximum penalty of life in prison and, in extreme cases, the death penalty. Prosecutors claim that Durk financed the Los Angeles shooting through his OTF collective. They point to a trail of financial evidence, including credit cards linked to OTF that allegedly covered travel, weapons, and accommodations for the suspected gunman. The narrative paints Durk not just as a rapper, but as the orchestrator of a deadly plot. The weight of evidence against him is immense. Federal prosecutors have compiled over 230 gigabytes of digital data, wiretap calls, text messages, social media posts, alongside financial records and testimony from cooperating witnesses. With federal conviction rates exceeding 90%, the odds are heavily stacked against Durk, leaving his attorneys few clear options. One possible path is negotiating a plea deal. By admitting culpability, Durk could avoid the harshest penalties, potentially reducing his sentence from life imprisonment to a term of 20 or 30 years. Yet, even this lesser sentence would be devastating, given the nature of the charges and the fatal outcome. A plea deal might save Durk's life, but it would come at a steep cost. Such a move would force him to openly accept responsibility, shattering the street persona that has been central to his music and his image. For an artist whose credibility has long been tied to his reputation in the streets, this could be a bitter pill to swallow. The alternative, fighting the charges head-on, comes with its own risks. Durk's defense might argue that OTF associates acted independently without his direct involvement. They could also claim that his lyrics about violence are purely artistic expression, not admissions of criminal intent. However, this approach faces a harsh reality. Courts are increasingly allowing rap lyrics to be presented as evidence. Critics of this trend argue that it unfairly targets black artists, criminalizing their art and drawing questionable connections between their music and their real lives. A far darker possibility looms as well. Prosecutors could expand the case into a RICO indictment, accusing Durk and others of being part of a larger criminal conspiracy. This would introduce additional charges related to gang activity, potentially dragging more co-defendants into the legal fray. It's a scenario that parallels the ongoing RICO trial of fellow rapper Young Thug in Atlanta, where prosecutors have wielded lyrics and affiliations to support allegations of a sweeping conspiracy. With so much on the line, every move Durk's legal team makes will be scrutinized. His defense will need to dismantle a mountain of evidence and challenge the credibility of witnesses. Meanwhile, Durk himself must grapple with the possibility of losing his freedom, his career, and the cultural legacy he's worked so hard to create. The outcome of this case will shape not only Lil Durk's future, but also the larger conversation around how the legal system handles artists accused of turning their words into actions. If convicted, it will serve as a chilling example of how rap lyrics can be weaponized in court. If he somehow walks free, it could fuel the argument that such tactics unfairly target hip-hop artists. Either way, Lil Durk's next steps will leave a lasting imprint on the music industry and on the battle over what it means to separate art from reality. For Lil Durk, the looming possibility of a RICO charge spells prolonged legal battles, skyrocketing defense costs, and the ever-present threat of a life sentence. His current reality is stark. Confined to a federal detention center, he's been denied bail due to allegations that he's a flight risk. Prosecutors have pointed to what they call evidence of potential escape attempts. 3 unbooked flights to Dubai, Italy, and Switzerland made after his associates were taken into custody. These claims have been enough to keep him behind bars, cutting him off from his music empire and his OTF collective at a critical moment. Without bail, Durk can't directly oversee his business operations. Instead, he's been forced to rely on a patchwork strategy: pre-recorded material, limited communication through prison phone calls, and trusted proxies handling the day-to-day of OTF. His 2025 album Deep Thoughts, released post-arrest, reflects this approach. It's a project largely pieced together from previously recorded material and phone-recorded vocals, showcasing a resourceful yet constrained creative process. But this method of releasing music has steep limitations. With no promotional tours, no eye-catching viral music videos, and no attendance at major industry events, Deep Thoughts is at risk of falling short commercially. Without the ability to directly connect with his audience, Durk's reach could wane. The financial repercussions are already severe. Federal defense lawyers typically command fees that exceed $1 million for a case of this complexity. Add to that the revenue loss from canceled tours, dormant endorsements, and broken sponsorship deals, and the picture grows increasingly dire. Companies like Fashion Nova and Cash App, once eager to partner with Durk, may now distance themselves from the controversy. Endorsements that once padded his income could disappear entirely, leaving a financial void that's difficult to fill. The internal dynamics of OTF have also grown more fragile without Durk's direct leadership. Rumors of power struggles among affiliates suggest that some are jockeying for control, while others may be quietly distancing themselves from the group. What was once a cohesive collective risks fracturing into competing factions, each vying for a piece of the empire Durk built. Durk's absence from the front lines of the drill scene is felt far and wide. His melodic trap anthems, which once dominated streaming platforms, are less impactful without his active engagement. Though pre-recorded tracks may trickle out, his inability to perform live, collaborate in the studio, or interact with fans on social media threatens to erode his relevance. Some of his most high-profile collaborators might also tread carefully. Morgan Wallen, who featured Durk on the chart-topping Broadway Girls, and Drake, a frequent partner in the studio, may avoid public association to protect their own brands. These hard-earned industry relationships, built over a decade, could unravel quickly under the weight of Durk's legal troubles. Still, incarceration doesn't necessarily mean the end of Durk's artistic output. Figures like Young Thug and T Grizzly have successfully released music from behind bars, relying on loyal fan bases to keep their work alive. Durk could attempt the same, leveraging his dedicated supporters to maintain some level of cultural relevance. But this approach comes with risks. If fans begin to view his music as out of touch or inauthentic, the results could be devastating. For an artist whose 2023 album, Almost Healed, debuted at number 3 on the Billboard 200, a commercial flop would be more than a financial blow. It would call into question the very foundation of his career. Durk's rise was built on a reputation for raw authenticity, with lyrics that chronicled the violence and survival stories of Chicago's streets. These federal charges, however, complicate that narrative. They cast a shadow over his claims of staying true to his roots, as fans and critics alike question whether his success was achieved at the cost of accountability. The Number Free Smirk movement, driven by die-hard fans, has clashed with those who accuse Durk of hypocrisy, profiting from tales of street life while avoiding the consequences faced by others in that world. As he navigates these challenges, Durk must find a way to maintain his authenticity while under immense scrutiny. His ability to walk the line between the artist fans love and the public figure now facing some of the toughest allegations in the industry will determine whether his career can survive the legal storm that looms ahead. Lil Durk now stands at a crossroads, and every decision comes with high stakes. If he were to accept a plea deal, the fallout could be severe. In the eyes of his core audience, it might tarnish his reputation, leading to accusations of weakness or betrayal. Being labeled a snitch or soft could alienate the fans who have long championed his authenticity and street credibility. On the other hand, choosing to fight the charges and losing might secure his place in certain circles as someone who refused to fold under pressure. Such a loss could turn him into a martyr figure in the streets, a rapper who went down as a real one for standing his ground. Federal cases often hinge on cooperation, and Durk's trial is no exception. Prosecutors frequently offer leniency to lower-level players in exchange for their testimony. In Durk's case, Alleged shooters and other OTF affiliates might be tempted to flip, trading information for reduced sentences. This scenario would be devastating for Durk. If a close associate were to claim that Durk directly ordered the hit, it could cause his defense to crumble entirely. Testimony of that nature wouldn't just jeopardize his legal standing, it could also trigger ripple effects far beyond the courtroom. Rumors of snitching would set off a firestorm in the streets, painting Durk as a liability. Worse still, it could invite retaliation against his family or crew, escalating an already volatile situation. Durk's legacy hangs precariously between two extremes. A conviction could cast him as yet another artist consumed by the very violence he once rhymed about. He would join the ranks of tragic figures like King Von or FBG Duck, talents lost to the cycles of retribution and street politics. An acquittal, however improbable, would tell a very different story. It would elevate Durk as a survivor, someone who stood up to the justice system and walked away. He would become a symbol of resilience, a testament to the enduring struggle of hip-hop artists, caught between their pasts and the legal system's scrutiny. As a central figure in Chicago's drill scene, his influence extends beyond his own career. Durk has been one of the genre's last mainstream standard-bearers, and his downfall would leave a significant void. While rising talents like Lil Osama or C. Honcho might step in to fill that gap, none have yet achieved the national prominence that Durk has. His prolonged legal saga could freeze the genre's momentum, making it harder for drill music to maintain its cultural foothold. Conversely, the drawn-out nature of his case might also enhance his mythology. Over time, the image of Durk as a defiant figure facing insurmountable odds could embed itself deeper into hip-hop lore, elevating his story into something larger than music. The gravity of the trial is underscored by the severity of the charges. While federal murder-for-hire cases involving a death can theoretically carry the death penalty, such sentences are extremely rare. Since 1988, only 16 federal executions have taken place. Given Durk's lack of prior violent convictions and the circumstantial nature of much of the evidence, a death sentence is unlikely. However, the fact that it remains a theoretical possibility adds an enormous psychological weight to the proceedings. For Durk, knowing that this outcome, however improbable, exists only adds to the stakes as his trial date in October 2024 draws closer. At this critical juncture, the legal, cultural, and personal stakes all converge. A plea deal might ensure survival, but come at the cost of his reputation and the trust of his fan base. Going to trial is a high-stakes gamble, one that puts his freedom and legacy on the line, and looming in the background is the specter of a potential RICO expansion, which threatens to entangle his entire circle in a web of allegations. The music that once served as a defiant soundtrack to Chicago's streets now risks becoming a somber eulogy for his career. As the October trial approaches, all eyes remain on Lil Durk. How he navigates these uncharted waters will shape not only his future, but also the legacy of the drill scene he helped bring to the forefront. For now, all we can do is watch and wait as the story unfolds.